Well, it's been 6 months now and the results speak for themselves. So grab yourself your favorite cup of pre-workout, set yourself down next to the squat rack and settle in. Here's what happened when I trained my back every day for 6 months. What's up, guys? So it's been 6 months now. 6 months of daily back training. And if you've seen any of my other videos thus far, you'll know I haven't been just strapping myself into a machine and doing endless pump sets on a cable. No, this has been heavy, hard, and relentless back training. We're talking heavy rows, stone lifting multiple times a week, going for 1 rep maxes on the squat every single week, Berserkers, good mornings, high pulls, deadlifts, and endless pull-ups. This has been hard training, and the results speak for themselves. Training my back every single day has benefited my life in so many different ways. And today I want to focus on a few of the main ones. Today I mainly want to talk about strength, muscle, posture, functionality, and my understanding of training as a whole. So before we go any further, I should probably answer the question of why. Why would you do this? What was the point? Well, there were a few main reasons, but mostly I just wanted to see what was possible. I wanted to see how much the back could actually handle. For years, I had been listening to people that I respect telling me that no one trains the back hard enough, that no one trains the back with high enough volume, that it's capable of so much more. So I figured, why not throw everything I have at it and see what happens? I've also always been obsessed with building a big and strong back. In my opinion, an intimidating back is hard to fake. It's hard to truly replicate that look of power without actual hard and heavy work. You can go sit at a machine and pump away endless reps at a cable row or something, and you can get most of the way there. But to truly have that look that displays power, to get the thickness in your spinal erectors and your upper back and traps, and the width to your lats, you got to put in some real hard, heavy work. And that has always drawn me to it. And before we go into what my training was like, there are a few things you should know that I was taking into consideration when I started this whole thing. Mainly being junk volume. Junk volume was at the front of my mind. I wanted to avoid it at all costs. I did not want to sacrifice quality for quantity. You know, I didn't want to come in day after day and just do a little bit of this, a little bit of that, just pumping away, never really putting forth much effort, just so I could say that I train my back every day like it was some gimmick. No, I didn't care about that. I wanted to see what the back was actually capable of handling. I wanted to see how big I could get it, how strong I could get. I also knew that with a high frequency approach like this, I was going to have to be smart with my programming. I was going to have to dial everything in as close to perfect as I could get it. If I threw too much volume at myself right away, I might dig myself into a hole that I couldn't get out of. And I knew that if I was going to avoid junk volume, I was going to have to think in terms of progressive overload. Progressive overload was going to have to happen in some way, shape, or form, whether it be more reps, more weight, less time, or more volume accumulation, which is actually kind of special to this video, and I'll talk a lot more about that later. But I knew that I couldn't come in day after day and do the same reps with the same weight over and over, or I was going to look the same at the end of this. So what did the actual training look like? Well, you should know from the start that my work schedule had a huge impact on what I was actually able to do. Up until about a month ago, I was working 3 14-hour days in a row plus driving, and then I would have 4 days off. So I knew that I was going to have to pack as much volume as I could into those 4 days, and then over the 3 days, I would just do what I could. So I set my training up like this. I trained full body twice a week with barbells. 2 days a week, I was doing stone lifting, and then on my work days, I would do a quick morning session that was lower volume and lower intensity. Hey guys, so I just wanted to go into a little bit more detail as to what I was doing with my barbell training. So I follow what I call conjugate bodybuilding, and I made a few videos on that recently if you're interested, but basically at the start, I'll write out a skeleton program based on fundamental human movement patterns, and for each of those patterns, I have a list of exercises. Each time I come in the gym, I'll choose one exercise for each category, and I'll make sure that I get a record in some way. Whether it be increased reps, increase the weight, decrease the time, whatever. I just make sure that I'm making progress in some way. Once or twice a month, I also completed a strength endurance challenge workout, which I made a whole video on that if you want to watch it, but just to sum it up, I would do something hard over an extended period of time. To give you a couple examples, I would take one of my heavier stones and bear hug carry it for 30-something laps around my yard. I would take one of my medium stones and try to shoulder it 100 times, stuff like that. Strength endurance was something I cared about, so I was doing that as well. And I also did a lot of active recovery, especially during those early morning sessions. I think active recovery played a huge part in allowing me to train so hard so often. The main form of active recovery that I used was the band Good Morning, which I also made a video on if you want to watch that. But in my opinion, the banded Good Morning is the ultimate active recovery exercise. It pumps blood throughout the entire posterior chain, which is known to aid with recovery. It has a great strength curve. It reinforces proper hinge mechanics, which everyone can use, and it just makes you feel better. To give you an example, those 14-hour workdays I was talking about, they were on my feet the whole time, 3 days in a row. After a while, you start to feel a little run down. So I started taking my band to work. Every couple hours, I'd pump out a set of 50 with the band Good Morning, and I would feel good as new. I would feel as though I hadn't been standing for the last 3 days. In addition to all of that training, I would also have at least one conditioning session every week. Usually this session was higher intensity, but it would only be for about 20-25 minutes. And finally, when it comes to training, I should mention that the majority of what I was doing for my back on all of these days were movements that most would consider thickness-based. Exercises that are supposed to build the thickness of your spinal erectors, your mid and upper back and traps, the back of your neck and your rear delts. Stuff that isn't necessarily supposed to translate over to width. Though obviously there is some crossover, most of the stuff I was doing was thickness based. And I mention this now because the results I got in terms of muscle were kind of surprising, and we'll touch more on that later. Next, I think it's important that we talk at least a little bit about the nutrition side of things. When I started daily back training, I had already been bulking for a year. I was bulked up to 167 pounds from 145. I'm 5'8" for reference, so I was already somewhat of a higher body fat percentage. During these 6 months, I bulked all the way up to 176, and I started a cut about a month ago. I'm down to about 169. This is important to know because without the right amount of nutrients, you can't really hope to grow much muscle. Especially as a natural lifter, if you want to build muscle, you need to eat. So I made sure I did that. I was bulking almost the entire time that I was training back every day because I wanted to make sure that I was getting as much out of this as I could. And just to give you a little bit more information, I've been training for about a decade. Now, a lot of that time I was kind of just spinning my wheels because I didn't really know any better. A lot of what I did wasn't really translating to any growth. But when I started lifting, I was 115 pounds, 5'8". So even a year and a half ago when I started my last bulk, I was already up 30 to 35 pounds of pure muscle. I mention this so you know that these weren't just newbie gains. Anything I got from training back every day wasn't just because I was fresh. Anyone who's just starting out can build muscle from pretty much anything. But once you put on that base layer of muscle, things become much more difficult. Alright, and with all that out of the way, it's time to get to the fun part of the video. I want to talk about results. And first, I want to tell you about strength. Alright, so to start off with, I should mention that for a very long time now, when it comes to strength, my main focus has been on squats and stone lifting. These are the things that I enjoy, so I focus on them. And my squats have gotten a lot stronger, especially in the last 6 months. My back squat is in the mid 300s for the first time. I'm Berserker squatting full range of motion in the 300s for the first time, easy. My stone lifting has gotten a lot stronger. I was able to throw stones on my shoulder that I could barely pick up a couple months ago, so the strength is definitely there. And when it comes to deadlifts, I know you can't really talk about strength without mentioning the deadlift. I kind of neglected the barbell version for a couple years, but I got back into it about a month ago, and I can tell you that the strength is definitely still there. I'm now deadlifting with a flat back, the same weight that I used to deadlift with a round back. And if you've ever compared the two, you'll know that you can get a lot more weight with a rounded back. And I think a lot of this has to do with the fact that I've been training back so much. There's a feeling of solidness that I have now that I didn't used to have. I feel like I'm actually able to pack my lats when I do deadlifts. In the past, I kind of just be loose with the whole upper back, but now it just feels solid, like I could handle anything. And to talk a little bit more about squats, I should mention that my weakness for a long time now has been getting into that squat morning position. When you get to the hole, your hips rise a little bit early, and then you gotta kind of good morning the thing to get to the top. I am working on fixing that. I'm gonna fix that weakness, but in the context of daily back training, this is important. The last time I went for a straight up 1 rep max on the low bar back squat, I got to the bottom, hips rose early, I was in that good morning position, and my back handled it like nothing. I was able to good morning hundreds of pounds more than I ever could have imagined without any flexion of the upper back. Everything remained rigid. My back was just able to handle it. And I think this has to do with the fact that I've been training my back every single day. And finally, when we're talking about strength, I should mention everything else. Now, I did neglect pressing a little bit, though I still did it a lot and I still got a lot stronger. Having a stronger back translates to more power in pretty much everything. When I'm doing an overhead press now, when you get to that point when you feel like you need to arch your back to get to the top, I feel solid. My back is able to handle that. And a lot of that also comes from having stronger abs, because I think the two kind of go hand in hand when you're doing a lot of heavy movements. When I'm doing a bench press, when I'm fixed on the bench, I feel like I'm able to lock myself into place a lot better because my back is just stronger. So having a bigger and stronger back is also going to help you with your presses. Next, in terms of results, I want to talk about posture and functionality. I like to group the two together. Now, obviously, functional is relative to your current situation. Having rounded forward shoulders and a forward head posture might be functional for you if you sit at a computer all day. But in my opinion, functional translates directly to how confident you feel in your posture and in your stride. Let me explain that a little bit. In my opinion, there is nothing more functional than feeling confident in how you hold yourself, having confidence in your stride, and feeling confident in your positioning in space. How solid do you feel when you're standing on the ground? How good do you feel about your posture? Does it display confidence or does it display weakness? This is functional to me. And back training is exactly what you need for this. Back training translates directly to functional when viewed in this context. And in my opinion, for this purpose, the stone carry is the ultimate back exercise for this. Doing the heavy stone carry is going to make you feel solid in your positioning on earth. It's going to make you feel solid in your stride. Try walking around with just your body after carrying a couple 100-pound stone for a couple months, and it fixes your posture. Having the posture where your shoulders are back, everything's in line, your chest is proudly displayed, that's functional. And viewed from the traditional standpoint, back training is going to get you functional. What is functional in the traditional sense? Well, I think it means being prepared for anything at all times, having a high level of endurance, strength, muscle, mental fortitude, being able to pull yourself up onto a building while at the same time picking up hundreds of pounds. And back training is going to get you there. The back is your base of everything. It's your center of support. It's where your power comes from. It's going to keep you rigid while you're picking something up, and it's going to give you the strength to pull yourself up onto something. All right, now on to the fun part of the video. The part that pretty much everyone has probably been waiting for. Some of you probably just skipped here right from the start. I might have done that. Did training back every single day translate to me building more muscle? The short answer, hell yeah. But there's a lot more I want to go into and a lot of things that we should take into consideration. All right, so to start off with, we do need to take into consideration the fact that when I started training back every day, I had already been bulking for a year before that, and I was already making consistent gains in muscle and strength. There's always the possibility that even if I hadn't trained my back every single day, I still would have built all the muscle and strength just because I was doing a bulk. That's always a possibility, and I can't say for sure. What I can say, I think, is that in the last 6 months, my back has grown exponentially compared to what was happening before. And as I mentioned earlier, a lot of what I was doing for my back was focused on thickness-based exercises, stuff that was going to make it thicker. And the results I got were exactly what I expected. I got a lot stronger, traditional progressive overload took place, and I got bigger. My good morning is up to 225 for reps now. I got a lot stronger in all kinds of rows and deadlifts and everything, and my back is thick. My spinal erectors feel like cables these days, and my upper back is just solid. You know, it's not the biggest upper back, it's not the most bloated upper back, but it's just there. It's just a solid hunk of mass. My traps have always been a strong point, but they're big. The back of my neck, everything got thicker. But like I said, this was expected. And that leads me on to the next point, which I didn't expect. The most unexpected and surprising part of this whole transformation of all of these 6 months was the growth that I had in my lats, in the width of my back. And I need to tell you why. Well, if you look at my programming from an outside perspective, and I told you, well, I was doing all of these thickness-based exercises, but I was also doing a lot of bodyweight pull-ups. Then your initial response is gonna be, well, obviously you got wider, you were doing pull-ups. But the reason it surprised me was because almost the entirety of all this time I was doing pull-ups, it was what would be considered junk volume. I was staying very far away from failure. I wasn't even putting much intensity into them. I was just accumulating volume. The reason I was doing this was because in those early morning sessions where I didn't have much time, I would just wake up 20-25 minutes early and just do a couple sets of pull-ups. It wasn't always pull-ups, but when it was, I tried to get maybe 50 or 60 reps, and every set, I wasn't warmed up, so I didn't take it very far, do maybe even just 3 or 4 reps per set, and I just accumulate volume. In my mind, this was junk volume, and it wasn't gonna lead to anything. This was me just building the habit of training back every day. I didn't think it was gonna build muscle, and this is what surprised me the most. And this leads me directly on to the next part of this video, my understanding of training, how it changed. The main thing that I took away from all of these 6 months, all of these sessions, the main thing that I learned, the thing that has just flipped my understanding of training upside down, is that progressive overload in the traditional sense doesn't always apply. Everything I've learned over all these years with my training, everything I've experienced in myself, everything I've seen in other people, everything I've read online or watched in videos points towards progressive overload in the traditional sense being necessary for muscle growth. Logic says if you want to get bigger, you need to get stronger. But pull-ups have broken the mold. For some reason, this did not apply to pull-ups, and this is what has changed my whole perspective. All I did for pull-ups, besides a couple sets here or there, was junk volume. Nothing that would be considered a real set, a real actual working set. I didn't get stronger at my pull-ups. All I did was accumulate volume, and my lats got way bigger. So what's up with that? Well, what this tells me is that either pull-ups themselves are special and they somehow exist outside of logic, which probably isn't the case, or there is another way to build muscle, another type of progressive overload, if you want to call it that. Traditional progressive overload says you need to get stronger. Either you increase the weight, you do more reps with the same weight, or you do all those reps in less time. That's getting stronger. Well, this other method would just be straight up volume accumulation. You could call this progressive overload, but I didn't get stronger in my pull-ups. I wasn't able to do more in each set. All I did was just a bunch of jump volume over an extended period of time, and my back got bigger. So this is my biggest takeaway from these 6 months. This is the thing that has changed my perspective on training. It's the idea, or the reality, that progressive overload in the traditional sense doesn't always apply. Now, I don't know if this applies to anything else. I don't know if maybe I came in day after day and did junk volume on the squats, if it would cause my quads to blow up. I don't know, because I haven't done it. What I can say is that this works for pull-ups. So now when I'm thinking about pull-ups, rather than thinking in terms of how many reps can I do per set or how many sets can I do, I think how much volume can I accumulate over the next month. And with a little digging, you'll realize that I'm not the first person to come to this conclusion. Not by far. Let me give you a few examples. A couple years ago on YouTube, Omar Isuf made a video detailing how he did many pull-ups over many months and his back got wider. A long while back on the T-Nation website, Chad Waterbury made an article where he said he did a lot of pull-ups short of failure over many months and his back got wider. There's also the elephant in the room, Pavel's greasing the groove method. People have been getting results from the greasing the groove method for years now, and you could say that all that is junk volume. You do many sets of pull-ups, short from failure, over the entire day for many days, and your back gets bigger. So you don't have to take my word for it. This has worked for other people as well. So if you're thinking about trying this out yourself, if this sounds cool to you, there are a few things you should take into consideration, because I want to make sure you guys stay healthy and injury-free. So 2 things. 1, you need to make sure that you don't fry your CNS. And 2, you need to keep your joints healthy. So the first one is easy. Don't fry your CNS, your central nervous system. One of the most taxing things you can do for the CNS is to go to failure. So avoid failure at all costs. This is the junkiest volume you can imagine. So if you can do 10 reps in 1 set, just do 2 or 3. That's all you need and you're gonna be good. And to keep the joints healthy, well, the way I view pull-ups now, it's kind of an endless loop. It seems that the more pull-ups you do, the more results you get. But there is a certain point where you can't do any more. If you came in day after day, all day, every second you were doing pull-ups, eventually your body is gonna break. So what you need to do is try to push that breaking point as far back as you can. And the way you're gonna do that is by rotating the variations. Don't come in day after day and just do the standard shoulder width grip pull-up, or you're gonna have overuse issues in your joints. You need to rotate the variations. So shoulder width pull-up, wide pull-up, neutral pull-up, chin-ups, And best case scenario, try to use rings because it allows for free range of motion, which is gonna help your joints even more. And that's really all there is to it, guys. So far, so good. I'm bigger, stronger, more functional. My posture has improved. I feel great. I wanna do this forever. I don't plan on ever stopping if I don't have to. Daily back training has significantly changed my life for the better. So I hope you guys liked the video, and I'll catch you all next time.